But yeah, like Sia said, we're going to be doing a kind of quick overview of WordPress 6.2. WordPress 6.2 is set to release next week. The latest release candidate was just released a couple of hours ago, in fact. So now is a great time to, on like a test site, check out WordPress 6.2, see if there are any issues, so you're all prepared for when it releases next week. One of the great resources that gets assembled every time we've got a new release is the field guide. So this is over on make.wordpress.org/core. If you are a developer and building plugins or sites for clients or anything like that, I highly recommend checking out the field guide. It's one of the best resources that gets out there every time. And if you're just a user and you're not interested in the super technical changes, it can still be pretty interesting to look through. You can kind of get an overview of some of the features that are not just developer-facing features, but also things that are meant for users. But yeah, you can check that over at make.wordpress.org/core, and I'll throw a copy of that in the chat as well. All right, so we're going to dive into WordPress 6.2. So the biggest change with WordPress 6.2 is again on the site editor. So that's been kind of the focus over the past couple of releases. And something that is kind of significant is, I'd say significant. And on the one hand, it's a tiny little change, but I guess it's a signal of a significant change, which is that the editor is no longer marked as beta. So introduced in 5.9, I believe, was the full site editing experience, and over a number of releases has been continuously refined, and there's been some pretty huge refinements to it in this release that I'm going to show you some of. But it is now no longer listed as officially a beta feature. It is, I guess, now a non-official. It's no longer a beta feature. It's the official feature, I guess you could say. This doesn't mean that any work on the site editor is going to stop and what you see is what you get. No, it's still going to be rapidly and continuously improved like we do every single part of WordPress as the new releases come out. But we now kind of think that, hey, it's at a state that most people should be able to use it. And it functions pretty well. So let's take a look at the new site editor experience. So the big change, I think that's like very immediately noticeable, is where you kind of land when you enter in the site editor. Previously, you were kind of like always in this edit view where you had the traditional Gutenberg editor, but we now have this very cool experience where we have the preview of my site over here on the right that I can kind of scroll through. And then I get this navigation here that can take me around through the different parts of my site and let me edit those different bits. So if I want to go back, I can hit either the WordPress icon here or this little back icon here to get out of the site editor. I also have the option to make this a larger preview or a smaller preview. If you want to get a little bit of a preview of your site at different sizes or things like that. So when I first jump into the site editor, I am presented with my home page. And if I'm getting ready to make changes, I can just click in this content area and I get brought into the site editor. And so from here, the site editor's interface is pretty much the same as it was before. It's the familiar kind of interface that you're used to, but there are a whole bunch of changes that are going on here. So I'm going to start by diving into one of them that's pretty cool. One small change you'll see here is that this settings gear, it used to be a gear, it's now a sidebar, so a little sidebar icon. So if you've been looking for that, that has changed. But heading over into global styles, there's a very cool feature. So global styles is what kind of lets us make style changes across our entire site. And if you've been using WordPress for a while or building themes in WordPress for a while, you may be familiar with this concept of the theme unit test. This is where people would put every kind of post format, all the different short codes, all the different kind of like widgets and things like that. They would throw them all onto a page so that you could open up this one page and see and make sure that your theme provided styles for everything that was in WordPress at the time. And people have kind of replicated that to some degree with Gutenberg since 5.0. But we now have this feature built into WordPress through the style book. So there's this little icon over here up in global styles. And when I select it, it shows me all of the blocks on my site. This includes both WordPress core blocks, which is the only thing here. This is just a vanilla WordPress site. But it'll include all the third-party blocks, and they're grouped by their categories. So we can see some of these in action. We can, this custom HTML block. So if we want to, for instance, we can then hop on over to making some changes. So I'm going to hop into this image block here. When I click on the image block inside of the style book, it brings me into the global style editor for here. And I can see some of the different changes that I can make. I can, for instance, adjust the border if I want to. I also am exposed to the different variations that a block has. So you can see there is a rounded variation. And if I want, I can change that variation here. Maybe I want to add a specific border to this rounded form of it. That looks kind of cool. Now your eyes are not deceiving you. There's also this new feature over here, additional block CSS. So this is new in WordPress 6.2 as well. And it's part of the effort to bridge the experience that you had in the customizer into the full site editor. And so this lets you add additional CSS for every single block here. So I think we should be able to say, I don't know. So the editor for this is not as nice, I guess you would say, as the one in the customizer that is on the roadmap. Right now, it's just kind of a basic text area. But I think we can probably make some changes here. There we go. So we have made our image block have an opacity of 0.5. That's not really a control that you could do otherwise, but you can now kind of do it using additional CSS. Which is a little neat feature. I would say the main thing to recommend is that, hey, you should always try and use these styles and tools that are built into WordPress. So the different controls that are available when you're editing a block. But if you need some more power, or there's a feature that's just not enabled in Gutenberg yet, you can use this handy dandy additional block CSS tool to go about adding that. So we can see all of the different blocks here. Another cool feature is that the global styles editor now also shows a preview of the block. So let's say I exit out of the style block here. And I want to come down to, let's say, the quote block. So there's no quote block on this page. And so if I was wanting to make changes to this via the global styles interface, previously I would kind of just be stabbing in the dark. But now I can change things up a bit. So if I want to set the background here, I can maybe select a nice little background, maybe this gray. And I can see the preview reflected right there. So all of my changes, I no longer have to make them completely in the blind. If they are changes to a block that's not currently in my editing canvas, I get a nice little preview as I go up over here. So we can change this text color, make it pretty awful. That's pretty awful. I'm going to go ahead and reset back to defaults to get rid of those awful changes there. So those are some of those changes to the full site editor. Another change happens in list view. So there are kind of multiple different categories of blocks, I guess you could say, in the editor. One of which are just layout blocks like you are used to using anywhere. But another one are these template part blocks. And so previously, it could be a little bit confusing whether or not you were editing a template part or you were editing just a regular block. And the big difference when editing a template part is if you edit the template part, it means that, hey, any changes that you make here, they're going to be replicated across your site wherever that template is being used. And so now template parts have this very standout purple background, this icon here that should hopefully should make it a lot clearer when you are editing a template part block that gets reflected across multiple areas of your site versus just editing an ordinary group block. So speaking of those parts, let's say I want to make some changes to my header block here. I'm going to hit edit. And I'm now this is a little bit weird. I get brought in and then I'm going to jump back out, or I get brought out and I'm going to jump back in. So we can see here that I've been navigated into the template parts section of my site. So if I want to access that another way, when I enter the site editor, I can go under template parts and go into header. And now any changes that I'm making here, I'm making across my site. I'm going to try and use a pattern. So I'm going to go open up the inserter, go into the pattern section. And we have a section now for headers, which has been broken out. And we also get a really nice kind of step through view. I'm not sure what the best way to refer to this is, but we get to see a preview of all of the headers over here. If I want to, I can still jump up into this full page experience to scroll through all the headers, but this gives you a little bit of a nicer experience than we had before. So I'm going to try selecting this header inside full width background image pattern. And I'm going to remove the group that was here before. And we'll hit save. And now if I view my site, what's the quickest link to do this right now? Let's go back. We can see that change that was applied. It looks like there's a little bit of weird margining over there. I'm not sure what's causing that. Let's see if we can find out really quick. If not, we'll just forget about it. But let's go ahead and edit this header. I'm not sure. I don't want to get distracted. So we'll come back to that. Who knows? If someone has an idea as to what's causing that little white space, that's a little weird. But yeah, we'll leave it be for now. But so you can see that I have this new kind of header on my site. And when I navigate around, because it's a template part, it's been brought over to all of the different pages on my site. Another big change is in navigation. So navigation is still a kind of like tricky thing to do. And it's kind of like conceptually, I guess, complicated, but there's been a lot of improvements to making this experience a bit nicer. So we see when I open up this navigation block here that we have a new view. So you might have seen a little bit before that our block inspector has been broken up into 3 different sections. And so there are the settings sections, the appearance sections, and then some blocks have a list section like this navigation block here. So I am able to edit my navigation menus in this kind of interface instead of needing to fiddle up here where things can be a little bit crammed. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this page list block. This is one of the blocks that gets inserted by default, and it includes all of the pages that you ever add to your site. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Whoop. There we go. And I can add some of those pages manually. So I'll add in the page link block and link to a sample page. And we can add in here a link to one of our blog posts. We'll say, I am because we are. And so I'm able to edit it in a much more convenient interface, I think, than fiddling up over here. If I want to make more changes, I can click into a block and we can shorten up this title. If we wanted to add a description for some blocks, we'll use that description, or excuse me, some themes will use that description. And I can continue adding pages here if I want. If I want to, for instance, add a submenu under here, we could insert in a, whoops. What? Oh, we don't have an about page on this site, but if I select page link, that's not anything. Well, let's add a link to Google, or let's add a link to WordPress.org. I don't know, there we go. Into our menu there. And so you can kind of see I get this nice little interface for adding these things. And it's a little bit more convenient to do than kind of messing with the block inspector. That's very strange. I don't know why that text is white. Interesting. Well, we're getting a couple of more demo fails. Apologies, y'all. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. Interesting. That's not particularly readable. Strange. Okay. So we'll go ahead and exit out of that. And you can see those are those changes to navigation editor. Depending on if you've been, oh, here we go. Maybe submenu and overlay background. Here we go. So I'll set that to black and set this to white. There we go. I don't know why it defaulted to something that wasn't readable. That's very interesting to me. But there we go. We found the settings. If you've been looking a lot at the kind of evolution of WordPress 6.2, there was an earlier version that had you editing the navigation inside this sidebar area, but that is something that's kind of been removed for now. It's something that the WordPress team is like continuing to look at and see how all of these different experiences can evolve. Let's see what else we want to look at. There are a couple of other changes that we can take a look at in the site editor. One is kind of a preview of the zoomed out mode. So a really cool feature about full site editing themes is they kind of have child themes built into them. And these are through style variations. And so now when I select a style and I say, hey, maybe I want to switch styles, the entire editor kind of expands and zooms out. So I can see a little bit more of what I'm editing without being so constrained by what can fit on the page at one time. So I think this is a really cool way of seeing really quickly at a glance all of the changes that can happen from just selecting a new style variation. That one is special. We'll go ahead with this one. I kind of like how this looks. And we'll hit save. So that I'm going to go ahead and dive into the page editor. So it's not just changes that have been made to each individual full site editing experience. There are also some changes that have been made for the editor in general. A lot of these actually do kind of tie into some cool things about full site editing and themes that support global styles. So one of these is that I can apply changes that I make across my site. So I have this quote block here, and I like how this looks, but maybe I want to give it a background. And we'll give it maybe this tertiary background. And maybe we want to, let's see. Does this one have support for adding padding? It looks like this block doesn't. Maybe we can put this paragraph in some padding. Give it a little spacing, something like that, and we'll unlink these sides and just do it on the top and the bottom. That's kind of looking nice, I suppose. Now, so let's say I want to take these changes and I want to apply them across my site. If I have multiple different quote blocks, previously, you would just kind of have to copy this whole block and modify it every time. But we get two new ways to do that now. One, we can apply this block styles globally. Now, where has this gone to? Uh-oh. Where did the setting go? I'm sorry, y'all. You get more demo fails than usual. Yeah, so there's this feature, which I was going to get to after, which is that I can copy styles. And now if I insert in another quote block, I can go ahead and paste these styles so I can reuse them. And you can see that there. But there should be a button to copy them, and I don't know where that button has gone to. Weird. Is this only available in the site editor? That would be a little disappointing. Let's take a look. It is only available in the site editor. That's a little bit annoying. Yeah, that's unfortunate. But I guess that's still a cool feature. Not as cool of a feature as I thought it would, to be honest. Because one of the things that's annoying is that, hey, I make all of these cool changes in one place and I want to use them elsewhere. And I thought that was a really cool way to kind of connect global styles into the post editor, but I guess that's not there yet. That's unfortunate, but okay. So yeah, there are those changes that let you copy and paste just block styles. And so that is helpful for kind of going along and saying, hey, in different places that I want to use this, I can say, okay, we'll go ahead and paste those styles from before, and my changes have been applied to multiple places. Maybe in the future, we'll see that expanded to share that globally. Let's see, what else do we want to take a look at? So here's a pretty cool one. One of the things I think a lot of people that I've heard of have struggled with is that the editor for Gutenberg really kind of feels like a page layout or editing tool. And it's not the greatest experience for writing content. Way back in WordPress, I don't know which version, they introduced this kind of concept of the distraction-free mode. And in WordPress 6.2, we kind of get a take on that is quite powerful, I would say, in the Gutenberg editor. So over up in options, we have this new distraction-free mode. And this is different from the spotlight mode or turning off the toolbars and things like that. But when I hit distraction-free, everything goes away. The things that pop up all the time, the toolbars, the things on the right here, all of that goes away, and I can just focus on writing. If you want to, you can still do things like inserting blocks using the /inserter. So maybe I know that an image wants to go here. I can go ahead and do that, and then I can get ready to keep on typing and later come back to this image. So I think that's a really cool feature for making it easier to focus on writing when you're just trying to write out a blog post and not worry about the layout of your page. When you're ready, you can hover up at where the toolbar would normally be, hit update, and you can always exit out by unchecking this distraction-free mode. Speaking of images, a really cool new feature is that we have the open verse. So when you open up the inserter, you'll see now a new tab called Media. And one of these is the images that I have on my site. So when I click on images, this is pulling things from my media library. But another new tab is Openverse. And so Openverse is a tool that is part of the WordPress project now. It was born out of, what was it called? The Creative Commons. But it was something that has recently become a part of the WordPress project. And so they have an API that lets you pull in all of the hundreds and hundreds of millions of different images and videos and things directly into your WordPress site. So you can see this here. There are a couple of examples of images here. Maybe you want to see, I don't know, New York City. See if we get any cool images in New York City. There you go. That looks pretty awesome. So if I want to use any of these, I just click the image to insert it. And what it's doing now is this isn't just hot linking this image. It is uploading it to my media library so I can use it again and inserting in my post. And it automatically is able to pull in the title of the image, excuse me, and a link to where it's located at, as well as the license information. So I think this is a really great tool for finding creative images that you have legal access to without, doing some nebulous Google searches. I mean, like, hey, is this actually a Creative Commons image or stuff like that? You can use the Openverse, which I think is a really cool feature. Let's see. So there are some more changes in here. I'm going to see if we want to pull any of these out that we might want to talk about. Yeah, I think those are probably the main things that are worth kind of talking about in WordPress 6.2 that are more end user focused. There's a lot of work behind the scenes to kind of just being able to do that whole editor reconfiguration that you saw was a pretty huge technical challenge, but I think makes the experience a lot easier to use. Like I said, one of the most immediate changes that you will kind of see is that the blocks have been split into the sidebar. So that is something to take note of. If you're looking for certain settings, you'll see in some blocks that they have split up between the settings kind of area and the appearance kind of area. And they have split these up here so that it's a little less super long scrolling when you've got tons of different things going on here. So there's a handy little pointer that is telling you about it, that they've moved into this new styles tab. And so for blocks like the paragraph block, for instance, that don't have any of those settings, it's still on one. But I would say that's the only big thing that you need to keep an eye out for. If you're saying, hey, oh my God, where did this go? When you upgrade to WordPress 6.2, it's probably over in that tab. But those are, I think, the main things that I wanted to go over in WordPress 6.2. So I'd be happy to, answer any questions that y'all have about WordPress 6.2, Gutenberg, general WordPress things in general. Say the same word twice. Different WordPress things in general. whatever y'all are interested in.
Yeah, great job, Tim. Yeah, so anyway, if you have any questions about this presentation or anything WordPress, feel free to put it in the chat and we can answer it. So anyone have any questions, or anybody have something they want to talk about? We have some time. We can talk about anything. Anyone have a plugin question? Anybody have a plugin they love? Any thoughts at all? Did Tim do such a great job that there are 0 questions? Oh, there we go. It's full site editing filtered by user levels.
Not exactly. So it pulls into the capabilities where they kind of exist. So things like the edit CSS tool, that's only available for people who have permission to edit CSS, which isn't everyone, and so you can restrict it that way. And the full site editor in general is only available to people who can, I think it uses a combination of either customize or edit theme options, one of those capabilities. So it's not something that just general users in your site can gain access to, like if they're just an author or a contributor or something like that. But it doesn't have super fine-grained access control of like, hey, this very specific thing only allow it for some users and don't allow it for other users, at least not yet. That's something that I think people would like to have introduced, but wasn't kind of the initial brief for building this out.
So is it just using the core roles? Is it just administrators that have access to the website? Okay, great. Anything, Gregory's asking, anything added for schema and structured data, events, products, and services?
Not in WordPress core. That's still pretty much a third-party feature. A lot of different SEO plugins, and I think there are even some structured data specific plugins. But for instance, Yoast SEO has some different options for that. And I'm sure some of the other SEO plugins do, but it's not something that is built into just WordPress core yet for inserting structured data. I would say it's one of the very cool things about blocks is that it makes it easier to provide a nice visual interface for inserting something into your content that does map to structural data, but not part of WordPress core itself just yet.
Alonzo was asking if this is the default theme that's going to be released with 6.2.
So the theme that I was demoing was 2023. This is not unique to 6.2. It was released in WordPress 6.1. So we get a new default theme generally about once a year. So that's usually like the fall/winter release. So 2023 is what we'll have for the rest of 2023 pretty much. And we should hopefully see maybe a 2024. And I guess it would be WordPress 6.4.
But all the themes get updated, all the default themes get updated to take advantage of the latest features.
Yeah, even going way back, they get updates.
Great, good question, Alonzo. Anyone else? Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about? Any general questions about WordPress? Or not? I will say this is what I do enjoy about being in person. I feel like the conversations flow more naturally. We end up, we can end up going off on a tangent and talking about a plugin or writing some code. So I do miss that, but I understand, according to this poll, we are not going to be in person yet, but I will ask every month. Anyone else? Anyone have any questions? Really? That is it? Oh, do you see AI, like OpenAI, impacting WordPress in the future?
So WordPress.com has added a kind of first pass at like a AI kind of integration, which is, I think they call it like, I don't know their exact name for it. It's like maybe OpenAI text or OpenAI paragraph or something like that if you're WordPress.com/Jetpack user. And you kind of like are able to give it a little bit of a prompt and it kind of writes some text for you. I could see that being used similar with the images as well. So we kind of saw here how OpenFirst is pulled into the Gutenberg editor. And I think there are probably possibilities for bringing in some of the image generation tools as well to kind of have media options like we have the OpenFirst option. I could see that being something a pretty cool feature, but not as part of core WordPress yet. A lot of these tools still require an API key, and a lot of them aren't free anymore. So it'd be a little bit difficult, I think, to have it built into WordPress core, but something that different plugins are taking a look at.
Cool. Alvaro's asking a good question. Tim, do you know of any tutorials or best practices from converting a standard theme to Gutenberg?
Well, so I wouldn't convert a theme from a classic theme to a full site editing. It's really a different paradigm. But there is fullsiteediting.com, which is a resource by Carolina Neimark, I believe, that has a whole bunch of great resources about using and learning the full site editor as a developer. So it looks like they have a specific course just for this. But really the big thing, it's kind of like a paradigm shift, I guess you would say, in a different way of thinking. You're often not writing code, but actually using and becoming a master of the full site editor itself to output a file. Whenever you kind of like make customizations to a theme, there is this little export button that you can just download the theme that you've essentially created inside of WordPress. So WordPress itself, the site editor, kind of becomes your authoring interface, like, I guess, page design tools of the past. So that is kind of like one of the big changes, is that you're not usually writing very much specific code anymore, but becoming a master of the tools that the site editor provides you.
Great. JMarg is asking, is anyone here working on the implementation of TypeScript into Gutenberg? I'm not sure I fully understand that.
So the Gutenberg repository is slowly adding more and rewriting code from JavaScript into TypeScript. It's not something that'll have huge end user impact, but it is something that's in progress. So if you are a TypeScript developer, your types are going to get better. And a place where you really see this is like in the WordPress data module that is getting a nice kind of TypeScript integration that's been worked on. But components, for instance, are being rewritten into TypeScript, things like that. But types are available for, I think, like pretty much all of the WordPress packages already. So you can be using those right now if you're interested in it.
Awesome. Gregory Garvin's asking, are child themes even necessary anymore?
I don't think they're super necessary. You can kind of make your changes just in the site editor itself. And so since you're not needing to like write code, WordPress already keeps it such that when you update your theme, your changes aren't going to get blown away because they're saved inside of the WordPress database. So I think child themes themselves are kind of less necessary. Variations that you can kind of see that are built into a theme, I think also take away a lot of the need for child themes in many cases. So I would say like the times of like, hey, you know, find a theme, create a child theme of it, apply your changes, just aren't particularly necessary anymore, no.
Jerry's asking, so full site editing, is WordPress moving into no code development?
I would say it has been for a long time. I think WordPress's greatest strength is as kind of like a no code platform. WordPress is used by millions and millions and millions of users, many of whom I'd say the vast majority of whom don't know how to write any substantial code whatsoever. I would say that one of the big ideas behind Gutenberg and the full site editor is to make it possible for those users to express themselves in a way that previously would have required writing code. But by bringing more and more design tools to things that people can do visually is, I think, very much a goal of the Gutenberg team and WordPress moving forward to make it possible to kind of accomplish the big things that you want to do without needing how to write code.
Awesome. And yeah, and like Tim mentioned, I mean, it's full site no code development has been around, you know, for a while with Divi and Elementor. I mean, these plugins are installed on millions and millions of websites. Brian's asking, any breaking changes from migrating from WordPress? Oh, I don't know if you noticed, from 5.4 to 6.2. That's pretty specific.
Probably. I mean, like WordPress doesn't often intentionally break backwards compatibility, but Gutenberg, depending on how you developed on top of it, if you've written a lot of like custom Gutenberg code, That's something that'll probably need to get updated. But if you're just a user of plugins and themes, you should be fine.
Great. Well, Alonso's asking, will short codes still work and have a purpose as we go forward?
Short codes still work. I would say there's no good reason to use a short code these days, in my opinion. If you open up the block editor, you can find the short code block. And you can kind of insert in your short code right here, just as you would normally. So like if you're, one of them marquee text equals, here's my text. You can write your kind of short code like that. But I would say these days there's just about no reason to use a short code. The recommendation is to develop a WordPress block instead. If you're a developer, the tools to do that have gotten better and better and better. If you're not a super technical developer, who's maybe just dabbling, there are plugins like Advanced Custom Fields has like a no-code block builder type of thing that kind of works with how ACF models fields and data and stuff like that. And I would say that's probably what you should use instead. But traditional short codes, I would say no. They work, but there's not really a strong purpose to them anymore. It's really just legacy compatibility, in my opinion.
Great questions, guys. Great questions. Keep them coming. Anyone else? Anyone else? No. Okay, going once. Going twice. Going thrice. Anyone? Nope. Oh, I'm planning an e-commerce site with dollars in Japanese yen. I want to switch US dollar and Japanese yen. Do you recommend a theme?
I would say if you're doing WooCommerce and WordPress, my recommendation is still to use WooCommerce and probably still to use the storefront theme. So that'd generally be my recommendation. I don't think it's less of a theme feature, more of a plugin feature.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. It's yeah. You could probably choose anything you want. It would just be a plugin option. All right. Great. Thanks, Tim.
No problem.